the increase of population and the GDP in China, how could it change the migratory flows of Chinese people to the outside, to the other countries, and of foreigner people to China?
I think China is known as an immigration country because the Chinese diaspora community, is very old. And in the past, a lot of people migrated either, on a permanent or on a temporary basis. I think when we looked at the situation today, there are a lot of young people, students, that are going to all parts of the world to study. Depending on the region where they study, they either stay in the host country or they return. For instance, those people who go to the United States, they tend to stay there because, it's easier to get a visa to work and to live. Whereas if they go to Japan or they go to Europe, for instance, it's more difficult to stay, so they return. But in general, there is a tendency of young people to go back home. Why? Because, well, there are new opportunities, right? In not only in the major cities, but also in what we call second-tier cities, more in inland China. There's also a second reason why most of the students return, because a lot of the students, they have scholarships from the government, from what they call China Scholarship Council. Within that framework, the students, after they finish the degree, they have to go back to China and work for 2 years. So in that sense, I think there will be more Chinese immigrants returning back to China. In terms of internal migration, because in China there's a lot of internal migration, people from the more rural areas going to the city. I think we have now about 200 million internal migrants in China, which is huge. There too, we see some kind of changes because of the development of cities in the western part, in the central part of China. The migrants do not have to go that far. And sometimes, they can develop their own business, in their own town, in their own towns, in their own cities. And also, the talk that I gave on these farmers, when they manage to earn enough, from their farm work, they tend to stay, in their own village.
Okay, is the Chinese economic leadership changing the cultural diversity of the Asian region?
What do you mean by cultural diversity?
Maybe if the leadership is changing something about the cultural...
Right. Well, the thing is, in China, so far I've talked about emigration, but at the same time, we're also witnessing immigration. And I think most Europeans don't know, but for instance, in the city of Guangzhou, and Guangzhou is located in the most southern part of China, you find a really large number of African migrants, and these are not permanent migrants, they're temporary migrants, they're transnational migrants, and actually they come from all African countries. They go into the city of Guangzhou and they stay in a particular area, and they stay there for 2 to 3 weeks, and they buy all the stuff to ship it back to their home country to sell it there. And that's very interesting to see, because there is one specific community in Guangzhou. It's called Xiaobei. It's also called, it's dubbed by some social scientists as a chocolate city. You would think you're in Africa, really. And so, too bad that you cannot come to Belgium, but actually in 2 weeks' time, I will have a vernissage, I will have a photo exhibition. These are pictures taken by a Chinese photographer. His name is Li Dong, and actually he has made a lot of very interesting pictures of the African presence in Xiaobei. So, China is also a receiving country, and that of course create new challenges and also new problems, of living together with immigrants and foreigners.
Okay, and is there a country in Asia where there are lots of migratory flows?
Outside.
Outside or inside also?
Right. Outside and inside? What do you mean by that?
Yes, from abroad and...
okay, but that's actually China.
Or,
I think there is another country...
international debate.
Well, there's another country. Well, Asia is, of course, very big. Let's see. Well, the case of the Philippines is actually very interesting because the Philippines, you know, is really an emigration country. About 10% of the total population, you know, moves out of the country, and actually they're responsible for a substantial part of the economy of the Philippines. And I think one of the experts, you know, many of the experts here have pointed out to the problematic situation of this kind of, you know, labor migration policy.